Welcome to Preparing for the Holidays. Today's session is designed for people affected by dementia, either living with dementia or caring for someone who is living with dementia. If you have questions or concerns after this session ends, I encourage you to connect with the First Link Dementia Helpline, English services at 1-800-936-6033. The number will also be on the last slide, as well as numbers for services in Punjabi and in Chinese. Many different traditions have festivals and holidays in the winter months, and for many of us, these holidays have included lots of socializing, outings, and a general sense of busyness and activity. Whether you are a person living with dementia or you are a care partner, the holiday season can be a cause for celebration and a cause for stress. It can be challenging to find a balance during this season. Now we have the added stress of having to contemplate holidays during COVID-19. With so much change and unpredictability in our lives, how do we even begin to plan for the holidays? We'll look at why things are changing, some suggestions for how you might adapt some of your traditions, gift giving, some considerations around safety, and an incredibly important part about self-compassion. The first step in planning for the holidays is learning some basic information about the brain. By better understanding the changes in the brain, we can better plan for the holidays. We're not going to go into detail in this webinar. If you'd like to understand more than we cover here about dementia and the brain, I encourage you to watch or listen to the video in the Understanding Dementia webinar. However, it's still important to understand why things are changing for a person living with dementia. While there are several different diseases that cause dementia, they eventually become quite similar in their symptoms. Eventually, they lead to pronounced shrinkage of the brain or atrophy. This image demonstrates what the brain of someone with advanced Alzheimer's disease would look like, compared to a healthy brain of someone of the same age, sex, and general body size. This image can help us understand and recognize that there is a disease happening in the person's brain that is causing their symptoms. A person living with dementia is not in control of their symptoms, and the normal pathways of communication between brain cells have permanently changed. There are a few things that I want you to notice when you compare the two sides of this image. The first is global atrophy, which I've mentioned, meaning that all areas of the brain have shrunk as cells have died. We also see significantly enlarged ventricles. In a healthy brain, these ventricles are small, fluid-filled gaps between various parts of the brain tissue. You can see that in the brain with advanced Alzheimer's, these gaps have grown significantly as the brain cells surrounding them have died. As various parts of the brain are damaged, some of the changes can include loss of depth perception and peripheral vision, difficulty with any task that requires steps in a particular order, like getting dressed, can be difficulty in speaking or understanding what others say, and even balance and gait difficulties. We may see an inability to retain memory of the recent past, and difficulty with recognizing familiar faces, objects, or places. A person may appear apathetic, uninterested, and have difficulty focusing or maintaining their concentration. You may notice a delay in responding as the brain needs more time to make sense of words and sounds. Or someone might speak slowly or sound slurred, or they may not be able to recall the word they want to use and substitute a different word. Give them your full attention and ask if they want help in finding a word. For many dementias, but especially with Alzheimer's disease, there are profound changes in the hippocampus. In the brain on the right with severe Alzheimer's disease, there is a cavity where the hippocampus should be. The hippocampi are the short-term memory processing centers where verbal and visual memory are processed. Verbal memories are words, memories related to what we read or hear, and visual memory lets us recognize objects, faces, and places to guide us around our environment. If you are the person living with dementia, does this image help you to understand some of the changes that you have experienced? Or if you are caring for someone living with dementia, does this image help you to understand why the person that you are caring for has changed? So, how might the changes to the brain that we've been discussing affect how a person living with dementia might experience the holidays? This time of year, even with smaller gatherings, there are often multiple conversations, background music, decorations, and flickering candles, and that can all make for a busy and sometimes hectic environment. And for all of us, cognitively intact or not, anxiety causes our brain to function at a lower level. As I've mentioned, dementia can and does affect any of the five senses: vision, smell, touch, taste, and hearing, in one way or another. Due to sensory overload, a person living with dementia can find it increasingly difficult to connect with others, become very frustrated, and may respond by withdrawing. This may lead them to not wanting to attend social gatherings or to attend but not participate in any way. They may seek out a quiet place away from the activity. Just like a person with a broken leg in a cast probably wouldn't plan to join family or friends in a tobogganing afternoon because of the impact of their broken leg, and their leg changes what their body needs. In the same way, a person living with dementia needs to make adjustments based on what their changed brain needs. Although each individual with dementia is unique, for most, the changes in the brain have a profound impact on the language abilities, and those changes can cause great frustration as well as misunderstandings. Some of the changes we hear about from people who are living with dementia are that they may require increased concentration to follow conversations. They may lose their train of thought more often, experience having trouble staying on topic. They may need more time to respond to questions. They may have trouble finding the right word and have difficulty following multiple step instructions. They may have difficulty understanding humor, jokes, and quick conversation. These changes tend to create an experience of increased frustration. It can be helpful to think of it as a bit of a checklist, and each of you will have slightly different things in the two columns, because what is a challenge for one person is not going to necessarily be a challenge for the next, and an action that is successful for one person may not be right for another. but it can be helpful to look at some common challenges and brainstorm some actions ahead of time. Let's look at this together. So the first one in challenges is changes in the ability to focus and concentrate. And one action you could take is to set a time limit for the interaction or the visit. Can you think of any other actions that might help with this? What might you do to address the potential for overstimulation and subsequent withdrawal? You could reduce noise, have a quiet corner. You could ensure just one person at a time comes to visit. Another area that can be challenging for everyone are changes in language comprehension and/or verbal communication. What might you think might be some ways to address this? You might consider speaking more slowly and clearly. Allow time for a response. Give one message at a time, particularly if it is for a sequential series of actions, and just one person at a time speaking or visiting. Another area that can be a challenge for everyone, cognitively challenged or not, is finding something to talk about. Think about what you've tried in the past. Things that can be helpful here are to choose feelings over facts. Share an amusing story or a laugh. Describe a happy moment. Offer a photograph. Reminisce about days gone by. Not all of us will be lucky enough to spend holiday time with family and friends this year. We may rely on phone or video visits. We can apply the same communication principles around communication to these interactions. So let's consider, to help with focus, ensure there is no background noise or distraction during our call or visit. Speak slowly and clearly. Set a time limit for the call. Longer calls may be tiring. And one person at a time, whether on a phone call or a video call. And one message at a time. Choose feelings over facts. Be ready to share a good news story, something that makes you both smile. Consider reminiscing about an old story, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, sharing a special memory. Consider introducing music, singing a favorite song, though that doesn't always work as we've seen over video visits. For more information, check out our recorded webinars on virtual visits. This is often a time of year when the changes associated with dementia may be particularly acute. Managing those changes and the challenges around COVID-19 can be a recipe for high stress, as well as feelings of grief and loss. It's important to acknowledge the changes that have and will continue to happen, that so much is out of our control, and that you'll continue to manage those changes as best that you can. For both of you, this can be a time of grief welling up as some of the losses come to the fore. For example, the loss of traditions, the loss of anticipation and expectations, the loss of togetherness, shared meals, and gathering. So rather than a time of happy celebration, the holiday season could feel more like a sad and isolated time of loss. Recognize and acknowledge these losses and learn to recognize the accompanying grief that can be triggered. How are you managing your grief? Again, you may want to check out one of our recorded videos on grief and loss. The stress of the holidays and the realities of living with dementia also may bring up difficult family dynamics. Both caregivers and people living with dementia need to remember yourselves in all of this. You won't be able to do everything you want or feel that you should do. Burnout is a real possibility. So, as much as possible, enjoy the people and don't worry too much about the details. Try not to feel guilty. Take the time and space you need to acknowledge and manage your losses and grief. There are often a number of traditions associated with the holidays and elevated expectations. Dementia means that both the caregiver and the person living with dementia have to be aware of this uninvited guest that is now a part of every day. And that means it's critical to focus on the most important pieces of our traditions. If you can discuss this with your care partner or with your person living with dementia, it's helpful to do that now, early in the holiday season, to anticipate what are the most important parts. This year, holiday gatherings will look different, smaller, or perhaps no gatherings. Masks, social distancing. Think about if you have to wear a mask. Could you clip a photo of yourself to your shirt to make yourself easier to recognize? Or can everyone in the room wear happy masks or jolly masks, something seasonally appropriate? One of the most important things you can do is to adjust your expectations. Consider how you can alter your traditions a little or a lot and still feel okay. Think about what is most important for the person living with dementia, for the caregiver, and for other family members. That is, identify the traditions that mean the most to you, and then go even farther to identify what parts of those traditions are key for you to retain, and what you can let go of, what you can adapt, and what parts you can break down and share. That can help you to consider how you can recreate some family traditions where the outcome is good for everyone. It's often a balancing act between competing needs and desires, between your need to make changes to help ensure greater chance of success and enjoyment for both yourself and the person living with dementia, and the desire to continue with long-held family or personal traditions. And in all of this, involve the person living with dementia. People living with dementia are increasingly reminding us to include them in any plans and preparations for them. Nothing for us without us. Let's look at one family's tradition. Laurel is looking forward to their traditional family gathering. She and her family have decorated the house and baked special cookies. She wants to include her father. He experiences memory loss, and his dementia affects his ability to join in on conversations. He tires easily when there is a lot of activity. Laurel has realized that she and her family will need to adjust their expectations. Does this bring anything to mind for you? How can you change some of your plans this year? Consider involving the person living with dementia with preparations. Start first by involving them with conversations and planning activities. Focus on their remaining abilities and keep a balance between quiet time and stimulation. So back to Laurel. Because her father's best time of day is in the late morning, she has talked with him about sharing a holiday brunch with just her immediate family instead of the usual evening dinner with a large group. Laurel points out that having fewer people around might make it easier for her father to enjoy the grandkids. Brunch can be a much more relaxed time than a family dinner, and he can return to his home whenever he is ready to go. Simplifying the holiday season doesn't need to be serious. It can be a lot of fun. What are traditions that have meant the most to you over the years? As we've said, what parts can you adapt? How simple and unstressful can you make those traditions? And then, how do you share those adapted activities with friends and family? Plan activities that can be shared by all generations. Consider creating some special story photo albums, or even just a series of meaningful photos that family members can use to reminisce or to hear stories from before they were even born. Think about what seasonal music is especially meaningful and suggest family and friends talk about the music that they hear. Pull out favorite ornaments and decorations, or point those ones out to visitors as talking points. Consider all 5 senses, especially if visiting in long-term care, if that's allowed. Consider hand lotion for a hand massage, a warm cup of rich cocoa, maybe with melted marshmallows. Think about spices related to the foods of the season, a cinnamon-scented potpourri or a clove-studded orange. Music or reading stories or just talking together. Something warm and cozy and fuzzy, blankets, sweaters, new slippers. Seasonal cards or something seasonal on TV. Video visits with distant family, or family just around the corner this year, perhaps sharing some of the decorations or even decorating together over video calls. Gift giving you want to keep simple and practical. Consider the person's remaining abilities and symptoms of the illness. And so early in the disease progression, you might consider activity books like crossword puzzles or strategy games, classic movies and television shows that can stimulate the person, CDs and music that allow the person to reminisce, that help them with the reminiscing. A memorable photo album or calendar that features special family occasions and family photos. Consider one of those digital photo frames that displays photos, or a memory phone that displays photos and phone numbers of family and friends. As the disease progresses, consider a large typed clock that highlights both the date and the time. Some of them even allow you to enter in activities for the day, or consider using an iPad or some other type of tablet and download a dementia clock app. There are many of them out there. Think of simple craft activities that can inspire creativity or reminiscing. Perhaps even automatic night lights that will light as soon as it gets dark, if that isn't too practical a gift. At the later stages of dementia, sensory stimulating gifts can include items that contribute to comfort and feelings of security. So a fluffy bathrobe or a soft blanket in a favorite color. Comfortable clothes like sweatsuits and shoes with Velcro that can make dressing and undressing easier. consider a doll or a stuffed animal that can be comforting, and music and CDs that feature songs from when the person was young. There are often additional things, decorations, seating, lights, that come into our home with the holidays. And because dementia is a progressive degenerative illness, what was once perfectly safe last year might not be safe this year because of changes in the brain caused by dementia that can include changes in peripheral vision, hearing, comprehension, physical balance and mobility, sense of touch and temperature, and many others. You may need to consider safety. Survey the house for safety, looking for tripping hazards on stairs or if there's extra electrical cords. Avoid small ornaments, hard candies, or plastic fruit decorations. Consider that the fireplace, open burning candles, or space heaters could now be dangerous in the home. And in all of this, remember to be kind to yourself. If you notice negative thoughts running through your mind, give yourself some reassuring words, something short and simple, such as, "I'm having a hard time today. We all have bad days." That can help calm your emotions by offering self-compassion. When you catch yourself having unhealthy or negative thoughts, consider what you would say to a loved one or a dear friend in that moment. It takes time, but with practice, we can rewire the brain to think and speak more compassionately with ourselves. Remember, the changes that are occurring are not your fault. You are doing the best that you can. It takes courage to travel the long and difficult dementia journey, and no one comes into this with all the answers and never making mistakes. There will be mistakes. There will be hard days, and you may lose your temper at some point because it will all simply be too much. Take a deep breath. If you're able to go for a walk or simply leave the room and reset. And allow room and time for the person you are caring for to do the same. If you have questions about the information you've heard here or any other questions about living with dementia, please don't hesitate to call our First Link Dementia Helpline. English services are available Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. at 1-800-936-6033. Services are also available Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in Punjabi, Cantonese, and Mandarin at the numbers listed on the screen.